Safe, reliable, free, and honest support. Qualities you cannot find online. Until now. Introducing the next generation of online technology support. What technology malfunctions are troubling you? Let us know today on the all-new support forums at www.theapplepost.com.
Welcome to GeekCross, the podcast where faith and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jeremy Yoder. Each episode, we look at a topic related to pop culture or geekdom and have conversations that use science fiction, fantasy movies, gaming, or comic books as a jumping off point to talk about deeper issues and to wrestle with the big questions of life. My guest on this episode is Zeph McLearan. Welcome, Zeph.
Jeremy, it's good to be on.
Zeph, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm a white guy that fixes computers and does a bunch of other weird stuff.
What kind of weird stuff?
Well, I've got my secret laboratories inside my apartment. Each room, different concoctions, different inventions, and other ways to annoy the neighbors at 2 o'clock in the morning with green glowing lights.
Okay, what else is that you do that's a little less weird?
Less weird. I specialize in a lot of I do a fun couple things, and one of which I repair vintage computers. I collect vintage computers, and I work in IT as my main job, and I'm also a Transformers collector. There's not too many of those on the planet, as far as I know. And so, I collect the action figures, I watch the movies, I've based a major iTunes podcast off the franchise, so you know that, and, a handful of other shows I maybe dabbled in.
So you're a podcaster?
Yes, so let's call myself that.
What is your relationship to GeekCross?
Well, I produce the show. I'm the producer of all the McLearan production shows.
So when I say at the end of the show, this is a McLearan production, you're the McLearan I'm talking about.
That's me.
Okay.
And not the car.
And not the car?
I'm cooler than the car.
You're cooler than the car.
We're going to make the podcast cooler than the car.
All right. Anyway, so you're not like my typical guest here. You're throwing me for a loop here a little.
Excellent. I'm not everyone's typical guest.
You're not everyone's typical guest. Well, first of all, what are the other podcasts that you do?
Well, I do a show called Your Geek Needs, which is all about computers and whatnot, like how-tos and whatnot, and, just computer stuff. Whatever I deem fun that week, I talk about it. I also just started a gaming venture with the Game Shop podcast, which is a part of Your Geek Needs, and we have Your Transformer Needs, and we review all the cartoons on that, and every once in a while we'll do a general just show news. Or there's a lot of Transformers news. That might sound surprising to you, but you've got the major corporations that come out and talk about what they're going to release, their business plans, what's coming out in the news, releases, and it's kind of hard to keep up. So, just kind of keep it interesting. We do a show about that maybe once a month.
So let's talk a little bit about Transformers, because actually that's the topic of this episode.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known.
You wouldn't have known. So you and you and my family, about a week ago, we sat down and we watched the 1986 Transformers movie together. The animated film called The Transformers, the movie.
Yes.
And I have to say this. I am not a Transformers fan. I didn't grow up playing...
Weirdo.
I know, weirdo. I didn't grow up watching the cartoon. I didn't play the game. Not game. I didn't play with the toys. I didn't watch any of the show.
There are games.
There are games. I'm sure there are.
NES.
I'm sure there are. And also, I really don't like the Michael Bay films at all. I wanted to...
It's understandable.
Conversation starter, I wanted to actually read to you a little bit of a review. This is for Transformer Revenge of the Fallen, which came out in...
The worst one.
The worst one. Came out in 2009, and this is the opening paragraph of the review by the great late film critic Roger Ebert. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is a horrible experience of unbearable length, briefly punctuated by 3 or 4 amusing moments. One of these involves a dog-like robot humping the leg of the heroine. Such are the meager joys. If you want to save yourself the ticket price, go into the kitchen, cue up a male choir singing the music of hell, and get a kid to start banging pots and pans together, then close your eyes and use your imagination.
Yes.
So let's talk about. I mean, most people I think now associate Transformers with the Michael Bay films.
Yes.
Because that's what's been around really for the last decade or so.
They're big. They're huge. They're some of the highest-grossing films of all time.
And so, what is the appeal of those films?
Stuff blowing up.
Stuff blowing up. Big
From
robots.
giant robots, stuff blowing up, and borderline porn scenes.
Borderline porn scenes. I have to say that some of the shots of women, I find them objectionable.
Yeah.
But so, how does that compare to... Now, you're a fan not of just the movies.
Correct.
And you didn't discover Transformers through the movies.
No, absolutely not.
You were a fan before the movies ever came out.
Way before.
So what's the appeal of the cartoon for you? Why does the cartoon matter to you?
Well, I'm somewhat... I wouldn't call myself an engineer, but it intrigues me. And so just watching one thing convert into another is kind of neat to me. And I like, kind of the disguise part where you have these cars that have to blend into society and... Well, who knows? They're giant robots. They blow stuff up and,
So the secret part of it is kind of what's appealing to you.
It's kind of a mystery going on. You got engineering. It's just kind of a cool thing that really hasn't been done aside with the Transformers.
Really? Not even in anime there has been that kind of same sort of conversion?
Not really. Not as mainstream as what they're doing.
And when did you discover Transformers as a kid? When did you start watching it?
In 1999... My mother, she, for Christmas gave me the RID Ultra Magnus figure. Mm-hmm. And that may have been the worst figure to ever get started in the franchise with. Because this thing, it has 3 modes. It also you have to completely disassemble the figure to turn into a robot mode. What it is, it's one of those trucks that carries cars. Mm-hmm. I don't know the technical
like a transporter, like a
one of those. Mm-hmm. And so to put in robot mode is you have to take off the whole back end of the vehicle, transform the cab, and then you stick on the ends of the cab or of the like, quote unquote trailer as legs, and it's terribly confusing. And not only that is you completely probably disassemble it in 6 different places, and to combine with another figure, it has 2 heads. 2 sets of hands, 2 sets of feet, 2 chests. What?
Okay. So, as a kid, were you able to put this thing together?
It took me 2 years.
2 years. So, would you say that your own interest in technology and engineering maybe began with this? Is that kind of the beginning of it? Or?
I would say that technology got me interested into the Transformers.
Okay.
Even when I was 1 or 2, we had a couple home PCs in our home, and I was already fluent in Windows 3.1. Whenever that was out. And then when I remember the big 95 upgrade, Dad went around and we upgraded all our PCs and went to 95. And I was pretty fluent with Windows. I could take the machine apart. I used to take radios apart, put them back together, against parents' permission, of course.
Right.
But I just wanted to study, how does this thing work? And so I've kind of gotten that same kick out of the Transformers. Well, how does that car turn into a giant killing machine? And so that's kind of the appeal for me.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the 86 film.
Yes.
Just very briefly, what's the plot of the movie?
Plot of the movie?
In one paragraph.
I can give you 2 in a sentence.
Okay, give it into a sentence.
Let's sell more toys. It basically was a way for Hasbro to phase out the 1984 and 1985 cast of toys and bring in new ones. Well, we really don't want too many characters on screen, but... how do we get rid of the old guys and get the new ones in? Let's sell more stuff. And so basically that's what they did. It was never intended to actually be a good movie.
I mean, so basically what happens in this movie is that I can't even begin to describe it, but some sort of planet-eating robot comes over and attacks the Transformers, kills most of them, including...
so, see, those aren't Transformers. That's a different race of... robot people.
Okay.
I don't even know who they are. They really don't go in depth of it. It's just, they're there for the opening scene of the movie. They all die.
Right.
And we never see them again.
Okay. I mean, it was a little bit like watching Game of Thrones, where there's so many characters and you got no idea who's who. I found the same...
Well, I know who they are.
Well, you know who they are, by coming in totally cold. It was really this experience of like, I'm totally lost.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to tell who the older bots were and who are the newer ones is... which ones actually look like Earth vehicles. Because Optimus Prime turns into, a standard semi-truck. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the character Rodimus Prime, and he looks like a space Winnebago.
Right.
There's a difference there. Pre-movie, like actual 1980s Earth vehicles. Post-movie, space.
Okay.
Futuristic.
Okay. Why is this film worth watching at all? Why is it just not simply the cynical, toy-selling, capitalism kind of grab that it was?
At the end of the day, it is always going to be an hour-long toy commercial. Mm-hmm. But it has not only some great voice acting, Leonard Nimoy, Robert Stack, Judd Nelson, Eric Idle, and of course Peter Cullen now, who's become a major celebrity.
Right.
But you actually have a pretty decent story. You have great fights that aren't pornographic, and you get some. It's kind of hard to explain, but just something. If you have any interest in kind of a 1980s animated film, that features robots and whatnot, check it out. I think it has a pretty decent soundtrack. It's pretty 1980s metal, but.
Well, that's one thing that struck me as I'm watching it and the 80s music sort of playing and it's kind of silly and goofy. I remember thinking to myself, this is a whole lot better than it has any right to be.
Yes.
Like, I was shocked. I was shocked it was okay. And what was really interesting is that my eldest daughter sat riveted in front of the television unless she was running around asking you who characters were and making whooshing noises. She was totally entranced with it. And I think that kind of says...
It captures a lot of the imaginations.
It does, and I think it has some themes, kind of like of quests.
Yes,
it's a huge muddle, but they're there.
Yeah,
and good versus evil. But yeah, I think it says that kids don't really care about the quality of animation.
Exactly,
they don't care about the quality of special effects. What they care about is a good story.
Yes,
and whether or not they go somewhere and it captures them, and it certainly captured my eldest daughter.
Yes, which thrills me to death, just knowing that. It's not just me. Of course, there's a huge cult community or a fan group with just the movie. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I know I really like this movie, and how many other people in this town probably really like that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or know about it.
Right. It is kind of now sort of a bit of a rare...
Yes.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, I had a brief internet discussion with Kevin from a couple weeks ago. He was on the show, and he said that he went and saw the film in the theater with his dad. And he said he probably ruined it for his dad because he kept calling out all the characters as they teared. There are people who feel very strongly, I think, and connect about this movie.
Yes.
So, what is that? Is that just nostalgia? Is it just your childhood?
Both. These are your heroes. You grow up with Optimus Prime and his group of Autobots as they fight the evil forces of the Decepticons. Just kind of quote the theme song there. And watching them all die right in front of you. In the first 10 minutes, I would say half the 1984 Autobot cast gets killed in a spaceship. You're looking at your heroes. You look forward to these on Saturday morning, and they're all dead.
That's a bit edgy.
And then they kill Optimus Prime?
Right, right. That's really edgy. I don't think you could get away with that today in a Saturday morning cartoon.
No. Not at all. Especially with the amount of detail. One scene of mine that I think of whenever Prowl, he turns into a police car, and he was piloting that ship in the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. And when he gets shot, you see red acid start to spew out of his mouth, his eyes turn red, and then he just kind of falls over and dissolves.
Yeah, you couldn't get away with that today. That'd be considered to be too violent or too traumatic. There really is sort of this edge to it.
Definitely.
What was acceptable in the 80s for kids' films and kids' shows.
Mm-hmm. And especially the Optimus Prime death scene. Mm-hmm. Wow. The music in there, the acting, you have the sense that the characters actually care about their dying leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why do you think kids need that? Why do you think kids need heroes when they're small? Why?
Someone to look up to.
Why do you think they need that?
They need guidance. They need someone to follow. And, they have their parents for that, but I'm very different than Optimus Prime. You're very different than Optimus Prime. You're not a military leader that's also compassionate. And Optimus Prime is. And there are just characters, or characteristics of that character that just appeal to everybody.
So you think that the show and the movies teach good values to children? Or good attributes to children? Like being a compassionate leader, that kind of thing?
Just that characteristics that everybody looks up to, not just children. So I even look up to Optimus Prime. He's Optimus Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're a Catholic.
Yes.
You were raised Catholic, and does watching television shows about giant robots or talking about technology, how does that connect with your faith as a Catholic at all?
Well, interesting question. Oh, man, the hard question. Jeremy, no.
Well, that's what we do on this show. We ask hard questions.
No. Well, just kind of thinking about it. In the Transformers universe, you have, like, the equivalent to God and the Devil. Primus, who represents the God character, gave life to all the Transformers, and Unicron, like the Devil, the ultimate evil. And so you have the followers of Primus, and then you have the followers of Unicron, And then Optimus has almost transcended the military leader in almost to a Jesus role. Specifically with the new cartoon, is that he appears to Bumblebee through different objects, a mirror, or just appears in front of him, talks to him, gives him guidance. And on occasion, he will make an appearance in front of him, or in front of him. And so it's kind of like that, where you have the fundamentals of the whole universe, with God and evil and all that, good and evil. And it's forced into these robots. There isn't too many direct connections to religion and, like, the Transformers, but then again, there is.
I think it's back to, and I've talked about it with some other guests and other points of the show, where there are certain kinds of stories that sort of have some universal elements to them, sort of the battle between good and evil.
Right.
And I think that the show or the movie kind of sort of has that. It is another expression or demonstration of that kind of sort of basic story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to ask you, though, let me ask you this. Sometimes one of the questions sometimes that comes up with people who come from more conservative religious backgrounds is that there is a conflict sometimes between what the media that they consume, the geek stuff they consume, and faith.
Fiction and faith.
Yes. Did you ever have that with the things that you were interested in? Was it ever an issue that you liked cartoons, or you liked Transformers, or you liked technology and the faith?
There is and there isn't. It borderline almost crossed the line a couple times with just how you have the Autobots who worship Primus and all that. And, part of me is just, well, I don't know. Would that be against any of my the religion? The Pope never came out and said anything, so...
About Transformers?
No.
Do you think the Pope would talk about Transformers?
I don't know. The Da Vinci Code.
Okay. Oh, that's right. They did come out about that.
Yep.
Why don't you say a little bit about that real quick? What happened with the Da Vinci Code?
When the Da Vinci Code came out and became a full-length movie, the Pope came out and banned it and said, you were not to watch this film.
This is Benedict, is that correct?
When did John Paul die? So it almost could have been John Paul.
Okay, so it either would have been John Paul or Benedict.
It wasn't that long ago. Or it was long ago.
Right, okay.
And I was, I don't know, 3rd grade maybe?
Okay.
I don't know what year that was.
Right.
But he came out and said, no, you are not to watch this film if you are a Catholic. And that was the end of it. It is still currently banned by the Catholic Church today.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay. Well, you're not missing much. It's a pretty terrible movie.
I know, but knowing that I can't see it makes me really want to see it.
So why don't you go see it then?
The Pope said no.
How much do you pay attention to what the Pope says? Do you do what the Pope tells you not to do?
I try to.
You try to?
Mm-hmm. It's fun. The Pope also is on Twitter.
Okay.
So
right.
I don't know. That's just kind of fun. Like, oh, the Pope's tweeting today. How about that? Mm-hmm. Or the Pope.
The Pope. It's probably the Pope's staff.
Yeah. I don't know. The Pope has an iPad.
All right.
Yeah, so you
never know. You never know.
Pope Wi-Fi. Thy holy Wi-Fi.
The holy Wi-Fi, right. So, what do you think about the new Pope, Pope Francis? How do you like Pope Francis?
Honestly, he really hasn't done that much yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that much about him. I'm not against him. It's just, after John Paul, well, that's kind of big shoes to fill. And after Benedict, well, he was one of the first to actually quit.
Right, he quit in the middle of it. Yeah. That was really weird.
Yeah. That hasn't happened since, what, the 1500s?
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's very rare.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We really haven't had a solid Pope in a long time. And it's not like I follow his every movement, but he hasn't done anything that just constitutes, now that's a Pope.
Okay. So you think that the edict, and it's not an edict, but the sort of paper that he released on climate change doesn't really constitute
I don't think
having done a whole lot yet?
No, not yet. And then again, he's only been in as a pope for a couple years now.
Right.
So he hasn't had that much time to do anything.
I think for me, as an outsider, as somebody who's not Catholic, what appeals to me about the Pope is he hasn't really changed any doctrine. I know that some people, I think, read a lot into what he does. There's some, I think, wishful thinking in regards to gays and lesbians.
Yeah.
But he hasn't changed any doctrine on it. But he has certainly changed...
But he's expressed his opinions about it.
Yeah, but he certainly has changed tone. The tone is different, which is, I think, pretty significant, even though that has its own sort of limits.
One of the things that I find really interesting about what I call him Pope Frank, because, it's it's not out of disrespect. I just find it very hilarious to myself. Pope Frank. No, it's a bad joke, but it amuses me at night. Unlike all the other popes where science bad, Pope Francis has said science good.
Well, he was a science teacher at one point, wasn't he? Yeah.
And so for me personally, okay. So that's kind of where he's had my interest, but it's still nothing to the point where he's going down in the history books.
Right.
But it's still some pretty solid opinions that kind of contradict everything the Catholic Church is all about.
Well, he's a Franciscan, and the Franciscans are kind of the radical sort of order of the Catholic Church. He's also a Latin American Franciscan,
yes,
which means that he's had all kinds of exposure, been part of liberation theology. So we're talking the radical edge of the Catholic Church here.
I think he has the power to do something really crazy and really eccentric, which I look forward to. Just give him a couple years.
I mean, I really appreciate the fact that he isn't living in the Pope's apartments in Vatican City. He's sort of living in a simpler. He's tried to sort of dial back the wealth and the excess,
which I'm all about.
Which I think is really cool, and I really appreciate it. And so, as an outsider who's not Catholic, I admire that, and I say that's a really cool thing. And so,
I think he's a modern Pope. I think that's what we should call him.
A modern Pope.
Yes.
Okay. What does a modern? What does that mean? What does a modern Pope mean?
He's kind of going away, like you were saying, from the riches of the Pope, the lavish, the homes and the gold chalices everywhere, and just what I imagine a Pope would do. Just sitting in his giant throne all day with drinking wine out of a gold chalice, and
right.
Servants washing his feet. Where I feel he's more down to our level, where he expresses his personal opinions.
There's an openness kind of to him, yeah.
More of a transparency with him and the church.
What are you observing among other Catholics here in the United States and how they're responding to this? I know that some of the conservatives have been really upset with him, and it's really pushing some buttons. But I mean, what have you sort of observed in family and friends? And
well, just me personally, I'm pretty conservative myself. At the same time, that's kind of cool what he's doing. And so personally, I want to see what else he does. My entire mother's side of the family is Catholic, and they're not against him either. So I really haven't seen too much of the anti-Pope Francis, like you were mentioning, but I don't know. No, if the kind of shoulder shrug and the arms going where and the cocked eyebrow comes through on the microphone as well as it should.
Right. So okay, so at this point you're kind of sort of waiting and seeing what.
Yeah, just in an observant mode.
Okay.
If he was president, I wouldn't vote for him again, but I'm not going to go against him.
Okay.
No. It's just, okay, let's see what he's got.
Okay. All right. So we've been...
I probably insulted somebody, which is very entertaining for me.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
Doing internet work for almost 6 years now, which is amazing, since I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to do internet work. Just some of the extremists online, especially the YouTube comments, you people go insane. Really. I mean, for those out there that comment those hateful comments every time I upload a video, go back and read them. It's kind of fascinating.
Well, okay, let's talk about that a little bit here. So you're saying that there's been a long history of you posting stuff online. And
when you're anonymous, you can say whatever you want.
Is that what you're experiencing? The people saying whatever they want?
Whatever they want. They say it as it is, which at one point is, they say whatever they want. At the next part, I almost stopped doing what I did for a couple years because of internet comments.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting because, one of the themes of the past year has been, one of the things that's been going on, of course, is Gamergate. And, I have spent a significant amount of time reading and I got involved a little bit with the GG Autoblocker, Randy Harper's little thing. And so typically the harassment that I have sort of observed has been directed towards women and people of color and minorities by white guys, basically. You're saying that you, as a white guy, have also experienced harassment.
No, of course. If I miss a button on my shirt in a video, just for a split second, I will know about it for sure from the comments.
Really?
Yes.
Is it particular internet communities more than others? Because I know you do
That is a
topics.
good question. Transformers fans, they're some of the nicest people I've met online. Not saying the nutcases, no offense to you all, some offense, don't exist, but the tech communities, that is probably 90% of the hate is from the tech communities. You all are nuts.
So, all right. Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. Okay. So, when it comes to fandom and to geekdom, that the biggest amount of viciousness that you experience is in tech. It's not in some of these other kinds of fandoms. Not in Transformers.
Correct.
I don't know. I mean, not in Star Trek. Not in Star Wars. I mean, I know you don't do those, but you're saying it's technology.
Technology. That's where it's at.
And so, video games as a form of technology is part of that.
It is, but I haven't received any negative comments on our gamer videos and content.
So let me ask you this: what kind of comments? I mean, keeping it family oriented.
I can't do that.
do you receive then?
Go die in a hole. Take your life now. I hate you. Your whole family hates you. Stop doing what you're doing now. You're worthless, pathetic. Just not even constructive criticism. I can take constructive criticism. This is just like harsh comments targeted toward me. At the beginning of when I was doing these videos and content online, Your Geek Needs was the first channel I ever registered on YouTube.
So you're basically talking about tech reviews,
just honest opinions about software, hardware, just taking a PC apart. And there are going to be those guys that just cut you down. And the first year I did that kind of video work, I didn't know how to take it. I took it very personally. I read every single comment that comes through. I know a lot of people don't believe when I say that. I do. I have them all forwarded to my email. And so I just have an inbox that I go through at the end of the day. And so I read everything you say. Even if you delete the comment off YouTube, I get it.
So about how many kind of comments do you get, like per week or per day? Or
I probably get over 100 per every couple days.
Really?
And that's the whole fan or the whole McLearan Productions.
So we're talking multiple podcasts
Correct.
and that kind of stuff. So why do you think that happens? Why do you think the tech community is this toxic that it would act this way?
There are 7 billion people on the Earth.
Right.
How many of them do you think are Transformer fans?
Probably a very, very small amount.
How many do you think use a computer?
Probably most of the 7 billion.
There's your answer.
So you think because certain forms of fandom, geekdom, are smaller communities, and people know each other, sort of. Or...
Exactly, yeah. You kind of make relationships, with Transformers. It's such a minute crowd that you all are just there to love the franchise. Whatever you are. You like comic books, you like the TV show, the movie, the toys. You love it. Computers. That's so, huge. And so, there's going to be different people that, even down to, I use the mouse with my right hand. This is why you left-handed people are stupid.
Really?
So, it's down to that. People are very biased.
Okay.
And I'm biased myself. I love Apple computers.
Right, but you wouldn't go on somebody's YouTube channel or send somebody an email and tell them to go die.
Yeah, just for using Windows? No, I would never do that.
I mean, that seems to me kind of insane.
Yes. You see my point.
Okay. All right, I see your point.
Yes.
So, let me ask you this, too, because I have been dealing with this inner sort of monologue since about a week ago when we watched the film and watched my daughter get super excited and love it. And, we've talked about how she wants to build things and wants to tear things apart, and we're going to actually have her tear apart some electronic components and see how she does. So... am I setting up my kids to get harassed sometime in the future?
I would say that, yes, they're going to be harassed. Every bit of it. Teach them to become rounded technology people, and not just biased. Introduce them to all the tools, not just a flathead screwdriver. And allow them to figure out what they like, and show them why other people like the other things. Okay. That'll make them as round as it can be. I know I like the Mac. I do multimedia work. The Mac's great for that. I can see the appeal of Windows, Linux, Unix, all the major operating system distributions. I know why people like them, and more power to them.
Okay. So in other words, giving them a good education
Yes.
in terms of that, make sure they're well-rounded people, so that when they encounter harassment and get told to kill themselves, or
Yes.
they're not real gamers or whatever, they have communities to go through and support and that kind of stuff. Because it's something actually I have to admit I worry a bit about. That am I setting her up to
Yes.
for this kind of stuff?
You are.
I am.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. It makes me feel so much better.
That's what I'm here for. Motivational speaker right there on my job description.
That's right. Okay. Well, we've been talking for a little bit while, so is there anything else you'd like to talk about today?
What did you think of the movie?
Well, again, I thought the Transformers movie was a lot better than I expected it to be. There were some parts of it I thought were quite entertaining. Again, I was surprised by how edgy it was. Not unhappy about it. Just
Yeah.
like, oh wow.
Well, even the 2 curse words in there, that's kind of
Right,
weird.
there are a couple curse words in there.
The first one's just jarring.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it, but there were other parts of it where I was completely bewildered and had no idea what was going on, and none of this made any sense. And who are these other Transformers? And this is really ridiculous. So I don't know. I feel kind of like caught in between a couple different places on this.
Yeah. It's a fun movie. If you're into just a little bit, watch the 1986 Transformer movie. It's a lot of fun, and there's going to be some part in it that you'll like.
So as a fan of the cartoon, how do you then deal with the Michael Bay atrocities? Can I use that word?
I void out any hope of getting a good story out of it. Honestly, at the end of the day, I like seeing CG robots. Those have some of the best special effects
They're
of any
really,
movie.
really well animated. I mean,
And that's what I go for. Is I go for the voice acting, and I go for the giant robots, the eye candy. And then, if I get some story in there, okay. But honestly, I still watch them, kind of frequently.
Okay.
In the background.
Okay.
I like looking over and like, there's a giant robot getting, stabbed.
So forget story.
Forget story altogether.
Forget good characters.
Michael Bay is not known for a good story. He's known for great special effects.
And explosions.
Yeah.
So basically, he delivers on what you kind of expect, but don't put any more
Exactly.
into that. Okay.
Well, there's one last thing I want to talk about.
Yes.
The Transformers.
Okay.
This is just kind of a fun thing. What I've learned with being a Transformers fan. Because I don't have too much formal education about anything. But from just Transformers, I've gotten an interest in like voice acting, and I'm now more aware of voice talent. Just watching a Saturday morning cartoon, you don't know the amount of work that goes into it.
Right.
I've learned how to animate. I've learned animation 3D from watching the Transformers. I've learned business. I've learned retail strategy. I've learned a lot of things just from a Saturday morning cartoon, which I think is one of the coolest parts about it is I now know retail distributions with the toys. I know the factory. I know development cycles for the toys as well. I've taken it.
This is from just studying what they're doing.
Exactly. The whole thing. I've learned engineering in a whole from it. I've learned just art from vocal to visual. And the Transformers are what it is. But it's given me an interest on all these great businesses in just how to take a sketch to toy to cartoon to voice all in one.
So what do you hope to do with all that knowledge and that interest?
Well, voice acting, I've gotten an interest in that pretty recently.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in a couple commercials. I have been in a couple cartoons. And I hope to lend my voice as a Transformer very soon. I've got a couple gigs lined up that I can't talk too much about on microphone. Off microphone, I couldn't be more excited to spill the beans about the script.
You were just recently at a convention, at a Transformers
Yes.
convention, where you were part of a panel where
Yes.
you did a voice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read with Dan Gilvezan, the voice of Generation 1 Bumblebee. Mm-hmm. And that was an experience like no other.
Which con was that?
It's called TF Expo. It's a very small fan-run convention that has gotten pretty large pretty recently.
Okay.
This year was their largest convention, but it's the only Transformers convention in the Midwest. Mm. I live pretty close to the Midwest. Usually the official Transformers convention is not only really expensive, but it's in Chicago, it's in California, it's in Kentucky, Tennessee.
Right.
Never Illinois.
Right. So small conventions have their place.
Oh, definitely.
They're much more accessible and things like that.
Much more inexpensive, too.
Okay.
And it's more of an intimate experience.
Sure.
I love it.
Well, good. Well, I'm looking forward to having more times to collaborate with
Yes.
you, and we've had some conversations about cool GeekCross stuff we might want to try.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens out of that. Zeph, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at ZMcLearan, ZMCLEARAN, as well as our various Facebook and Twitter pages. If you have an interest, more than likely I produce something about it.
Okay. Well, we'll throw some of your links to your podcast in the show notes and direct people there.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Zeph, so much for
Thanks
being
for having
part-
me on, Jeremy.
It was really great. If you like GeekCross, you can help us out by leaving us a review on Twitter. You can get a hold of us by emailing us at geekcrossshow@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at geekcrossshow. You can also find show notes for this episode and some other episodes at jeremyyoder.net. GeekCross is a McLearan production. My name is Jeremy Yoder. Thank you for listening.